Hello again and welcome. This video is about our good friend David Lammy. He's been very vocal in relation to the Grenfell Tower fire. And one of the things I want to bring up is his recent comments in the media. But before I prejudice your view in any way whatsoever, I just wish to go through some of the history regarding David Lammy. So, I mean, you can get what you wish from Wikipedia, David Lammy, MP for Tottenham. Um, but some of the things I want to highlight is that he did go to Harvard University on a scholarship, so he earned that. Potentially talented students get a scholarship, and he was the first black English or black British, should we say, black British man to be awarded a scholarship to Harvard University in America, which is, I think everyone knows Harvard University. It's like Oxford in England. So he did a stint at Harvard. He studied, I believe, he studied a law course out in Harvard. And when he returned to the UK, he then went to the Lincoln, I think it's, and he studied there as well. And after he studied there, he actually did a brief spell as a barrister, being called to the bar. And so I don't know how long he did that, but obviously he's no longer a barrister or operating in a legal capacity with legal rights of audience in a legal setting. He decided to go into politics, and that's where he's been quite successful. He's obviously been elected as the Labour MP for Tottenham. And now I just want to leave you with that thought while we listen to what he said recently on Sky News. And then after that interview with Sky News, I'll come back in and we'll carry on.
I'm disappointed that he's expressed doubt of that kind before even meeting the survivors and victims. This is not a court case. There's not two sides. There are survivors and victims, and it seems to me if you're leading an inquiry, you're walking with them to get to the truth. And you need to be looking at the terms of reference and the scope of your inquiry in partnership with those people. So I'm worried that he's kicked off the inquiry, framing it in a sort of small, tiny way.
And do you think he's the right person to lead the inquiry?
Look, politicians have to always be careful of being in a critical place in relation to the judiciary. But he is a white upper middle class man who I suspect has never ever visited a tower block housing estate and certainly hasn't slept a night on the 20th floor of one. I hope he will do that in the days ahead. The job is not just to be independent and judicious. I'm sure he's eminently legally qualified. Of course he is. It is also to be empathetic and to walk with these people on this journey. And to sit with them and understand that their lives were in the hands of the state and something badly failed. It's a shame that we couldn't find a woman to lead the inquiry, or indeed an ethnic minority to lead the inquiry in 2017. And I think the victims will also say to themselves, when push comes to shove, there are some powerful people here, contractors, subcontractors, local authorities, governments, and they look like this judge. Whose side will he be on? So he needs to get close to those victims and survivors very, very quickly and establish that he is after the truth and he's fearless and independent and he won't be swayed because he too is a part of the establishment.
So there you have it, David Lammy talking about how this judge is not of the right creed, I suppose you could say, in relation to his ability to support the survivors of Grenfell. Now, I have an issue with that because even David Lammy just said about, I'm sure he's eminently legally qualified, and part of his duties as a judge would be not to have favour. I mean, it's fear and favour in relation to his judgments. And one of the things I'm very happy with about this judge is the fact that he's come forward very early, almost within a day or two of him being appointed and going down to Grenfell Tower. He made it very clear that he doesn't believe that this is what the victims want. or he doesn't believe that this inquiry is going to get the result that people who, believe he's going to be able to get the results that they want. Now, obviously, we're talking about justice, bringing people to account. That's not within the scope of a public inquiry, as far as I'm aware. Look at Hillsborough disaster, yeah, and you look at any public inquiry. Have there ever been less than 2 years? Has anyone ever gone to prison within 3 or 4? No. I haven't done my research on that, but I don't even need to because it's just a given. So that's the judge coming out and saying that, and Lammy's obviously being very vocal in his doubt also, but not really in the case of the technical point of the fact that it's a public inquiry. He's just it is an attack on this guy because it turns out his dad is a dairy farmer and his mother was a teacher, this judge. So David Lammy's made the statement that this man is upper middle class. Now, I don't know if a dairy farmer would ever class themselves as upper middle class. Not to say that they don't make a shed ton of money. Maybe they do. I mean, a lot of them are going out of business at the moment in the UK. And then you've got your mum as a teacher. Now, that speaks enough. So you've got to be very careful about what you say or presume. I mean, you can say what you like, but when your presumptions fall flat on their face, you have to take a step back and realise what you're accusing. And then to obviously go on to say that he's never slept in a 20th-storey tower block, and I hope that he does so soon, is another interesting thing. I mean, how many other people in the country have slept in a 20-storey? I mean, this is a monstrous building, Grenfell. It's really big for the UK. It's, 28 stories, 20-something odd stories? It's massive, and we don't have that many huge tower blocks of that nature. I mean, we have tower blocks, but 28 stories and a huge thing. So there we are. So he's not criticising the technical aspect of the inquiry. He's going straight for the man, which is completely the wrong way round. And I just want to go now on to an interview I had with Nigel Farage, where I was putting in my 2-bit cents about what can be done for people traditionally, let's say in a historic concept, what people would do with grand juries. So let's listen to that now.
Anthony in Merson, you're my first caller this evening. Hello. Do you think Theresa May is right and that a public inquiry is the way to go forward?
Well, a caller earlier on with Ian Dale was talking about how a public inquiry in relation to Hillsborough went on for, 20-odd years, I think he said, and still they haven't really got any results. So I think, there should be a public inquiry into public inquiries in that respect. But I think while you're in America, why don't you get some of the good old-fashioned grand jury dusty books out from the libraries over there and just see if we can maybe have a grand jury investigate this, as opposed to going back to Mr. Legal Government saying, can you sort out your legal problems, please, Mr. Legal Government?
Wow. Well, that's a very, very interesting point, Anthony, because here, when there's a congressional committee on something or a grand jury into something, they effectively have about the same power as a court. They can subpoena people. Yeah, they are. They can subpoena people to appear before them. And I often get the feeling that our parliamentary committees that we have in Westminster are talking shops, whereas here they are the real deal. And Anthony, I think, actually we could we not, if we had the powers vested in our elected MPs, we could do this a damn sight more quickly than any public inquiry would ever provide any evidence.
Well, that's the whole point. You're supposed to have speed and swift, justice should not be delayed or denied. And I think, if people actually realise how to access the court system so that they could set up Farage Court, for example, that can exist, and actually independently investigate, you could head the grand jury and then get the people in to fairly issue out orders and get people to come to court. There's nothing special about a court.
So would it be fair to say, Anthony, that you think what Theresa May has said is just too little and it will take too long?
It's like asking the independent police complaints people to investigate the police. It's their own bodies out to investigate their own boys. Get it out of the government. People who aren't registered to vote, who aren't British citizens, set up a court of record at the grand jury, and you'll sweep the board of these people, and ultimately the people who account will ultimately pay the price.
Anthony, that's a very positive suggestion for my first call this evening, and I thank you. Joe
So just to come in on that point, now I was doing a lot of research into grand juries in the UK at the time, trying to establish an independent way of investigating the perpetrators of Grenfell. Like I said, I've never said it's a deliberate act. It's purely an accident, and obviously accidents happen. Where accidents lead, or negligence leads to serious accidents where people have died, there is a case for negligence manslaughter. Now, I'm not going to go into every detail about that, but to put it shortly, the legal society and the government have put an end to the traditional format of grand juries in the UK. Not to say that it's impossible to have one, but the way that they were always administrated has been put to rest, abolished, if you want, by them. By their society, the society which belongs to government, not the people per se. They require you to register, to vote, to be, if you like, solicited wholesale. That's essentially what a politician is. It's a wholesale solicitor, as opposed to the retail solicitor you go in to get various documents witnessed and signed and whatever. So a politician is the wholesale solicitor that when you register to vote, you get your say in their parliament, and for that they latch you with a load of conditions of being a member. But anyway, the point I'm trying to get to at the end of this is that the judge has come forward and said that the inquiry that he's operating is on behalf of the government, again, which is what I was making the point with Nigel Farage, is that until someone actually opens their own court and says, look, I've been harmed, I've been wronged, I've suffered loss, and they actually take the people who they believe or they can reasonably prove had a duty of care, and were obviously it's dereliction of duty in this. There's just so much information that you can draw upon to build a case to hold the people that you believe are responsible for the breach of the duty, the neglect of the duty of care. And going back to David Lammy is going on about this public inquiry like it's going to make a difference. But you have to remember, David Lammy is part of that society. He's a member of Parliament, and especially from his point of view, he can't instigate a King's Bench or a common law court of record case against any, like, his own people, essentially. I mean, as much as he's trying to say how the society and the government of Britain operates a two-tier system of have and have-nots, and the have-nots is just a bit tough, he's right to raise that point. That's absolutely valid. But in terms of getting justice for the victims, it's going to do nothing. And that's what my main concern is with. So I'll do another video on this because I'm limited to 15 minutes. But that's just a brief introduction into what I believe the situation is that people are looking around waiting for the government to fix their own problems. And they're not going to fix them. It's not in their interest to fix their own problems. They're just crisis management at the moment. They're calming people down. They stretch out the timelines. People will go away, forget about it, give up, the cause, lose hope, and eventually, they'll be able to come to some sort of compromise on the matter. One final thing, if I may, is that there was a very, very interesting interview that Nick Ferrari had in the morning on LBC. I believe it was on the 29th, Thursday the 29th. Now, it could have been the 28th, it could have been the 30th, but I believe it's Thursday the 29th of June. And in that morning, it was around 8:45 to 9 o'clock. And there's a lady who came on who knew all about inquests and inquiries. And she was explaining to Nick Ferrari why these things don't get anywhere and why, when you have the public inquiry, it puts the inquest on hold. Now, unfortunately, I was in the car driving at the time. I couldn't record it, and I don't have access to the podcast. So if there is anyone out there who has an LBC podcast membership, if they could do me a humongo favour and link me with the video, you will know it when you hear it. It's a very legally competent person talking about inquiries and how they won't have an effect because of the trump card nature of when the government gets involved, the inquest gets put on hold. But yeah, if anyone has that, I'd be most appreciated if they would link me with that video, and I can include it in my next summary video.